This ZeroNow program is brought to you with the support of our founding partners.
So to get started, let's introduce our guest panelist. Doyle Batten, welcome Doyle. Doyle is a former school safety and security director at Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Doyle, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, please, and your connection to the topic.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Doyle Batten. I am a retired lieutenant with the Anne Arundel County Police Department, where I commanded the school safety section for 7 years. And I transitioned to the Anne Arundel County Public Schools, where I was the security director for the school district. My connection with graduation exercises was really cemented after COVID, where our district transitioned to having outdoor ceremonies 1 year of 12 graduation ceremonies over 4 days, while one of our high schools remained open for service, instructional day. So that for me was really formative, and I'm glad to be here to share lessons learned.
Awesome, thanks, Doyle. Glad you could join us. Next, we have Jason Stoddard. Jason is the Director of Safety and Security at Charles County Public Schools, but he is also the inaugural chair and now president of the National Council of School Safety Directors. Jason, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, even though you don't need an introduction, of course.
Oh, stop. Thank you, Ara. As Ara said, my name is Jason Stoddard. I'm the Director of Safety and Security for the Charles County Public Schools. We're located about 20 miles south of Washington, D.C. We have 7 high schools, and since starting here in 2018 after retiring from the police department, I've been running our security, and that includes the overall security preparation planning for our graduation ceremonies, which have been both inside and now are outside at a local stadium. As Ara said, also the president of the National Council for School Safety Directors, seeing a lot of people that I recognize names, seeing a lot of people in the chat that I don't recognize their names. And we will throw in the scholarship link. If you are not a member of the National Council of School Safety Directors, it is free to join because of our partnership. We'd love to have you. It is for all school safety professionals, not just school safety directors. So I'd love to see more people. We're the largest in the world. We have over 1,000 members at this point. Not bad for an organization that's only 23 months old. So thank you very much. And as my colleagues that are on the panel are both members, and I think they would agree that it is a great opportunity to network and to learn a lot of things about what we all face on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly, and what's interesting also, Jason, and participant, we had a conversation, a roundtable with safety professionals and directors, coordinators nationwide. Was it 2 years ago on this topic? And we're going to ask a question. So every month we're going to have a different topic and have roundtables as well as this format as far as a panel discussion. So get involved and participate. Join NCSSD. Kelly Martin, welcome back. Kelly is the Executive Director of Safety and Security at Seminole County Schools. Kelly, would you mind just introducing yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. As Ara mentioned, I work for Seminole County Public Schools. I have been kind of in this role for the last 10 years. 9 prior was as lieutenant with the sheriff's office, and have transitioned kind of into a lot of the similar duties that I had while doing that, doing physical security and all of our day-to-day school safety and security operations now for the school district. But I've got about 20 years law enforcement experience, and we conduct our graduation ceremonies at an offsite in a different county, which adds some additional layers to the planning process. So I'm excited to kind of share some of that with you guys today.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. And since you brought it up, let's ask our participants here where they host their graduation ceremonies. Just go ahead and vote on that on your screen. I don't have hold music, unfortunately, but we'll just give you a few seconds here to respond. But this was a big thing in our conversation with superintendents and safety directors the last couple of weeks, on-site, off-site, the implications that actually has. And so we'll just give you guys another couple seconds here. Okay. Let's see. Off-site. All right, let's go ahead and share the results. So it looks like it's about just a little bit more than half do it on the school prem, and about 31% off prem. Okay, interesting. So Jason, you mentioned your district. I mean, how soon do you start the planning process for graduation at Charles County Schools?
The day after the last ceremony of the year previous is when it really starts. You're planning and moving forward because there's always something that's changing. So especially if you're using an outside vendor or an outside venue, contract negotiations. What did you learn this year? What are you planning for next year? Are you going to move? Because there's always things that are changing. While we were inside, we built a high school with a convocation center 20 years ago that at that point would have hosted rather large graduation. But as our county's grown over the years, we've had to move outside. So we are at a baseball stadium now. Well, there's always a desire to move it back inside because you don't know what you didn't have. And there are some pros and cons to everything. So it's right after that last graduation, you're starting your planning process and evaluation about what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what you need to change for the following year.
And Kelly, you mentioned that your graduations are held offsite. Is that correct?
Yes. So offsite, we have during COVID, we actually had them in our high school football stadiums. But traditionally, we don't have a venue large enough, like in the county, to hold all the family and things like that. So we use UCF's indoor arena. We have previously done it at their outside one too. I think it was the year after, it was probably 2021 during kind of the height of COVID. But like I said, having to work with external agencies in addition to all of our internal moving parts can sometimes add some additional layers of planning and making sure everybody's kind of on the same page for smooth operation.
So how involved are you in that, or are you utilizing UCF's safety and security staff when you hold it offsite, Kelly?
So we do both. I mean, it's a very collaborative process. We do want to have a certain amount of I guess control in that sense and understand kind of fully what's going on. But they are, our kids and our team that's working in there. So we do it in collaboration. We have kind of our more pared down operations plan that then we pair and work with them. They handle, kind of all the traffic flow and movement and those types of things. But our school safety and security team also works and is there for all of the graduations, as well as we even have one of our school resource officers from each of the campuses that attend as well.
Got it, got it. And I just want to remind participants, if you have a question for our guests, just hit there's a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen there. Utilize that, please. Otherwise, I'll get lost in the chat. So Doyle, tell us a little bit about your graduation ceremonies at Anne Arundel. You mentioned it was during COVID. I mean, what stakeholders did you collaborate with outside of the actual school district?
Anne Arundel has transitioned to 14 ceremonies that are on campus, with the average high school being around 2,000 graduates. But before they have transitioned to a commercial venue near the Arundel Mills Mall. For those who are familiar in Maryland, Maryland Live Hotel and Casino is adjacent to the venue of Maryland Live, and that is where 14 ceremonies are held now. But other ceremonies are held on campuses. So we do have that hybrid approach. But prior to this, right after COVID, where we learned most of our lessons that prepared us for that transition, where we hosted 12 ceremonies on one high school campus while that high school remained open for instruction and the remainder of the district remained open for instruction. So that averaged over three ceremonies a day for most days in this high school exterior stadium. And it really taught us a lot about the length of time that it takes to prepare. For us, it was 10 months from inception of idea to execution, with all the stakeholders, police, fire department. Some people you won't usually think of, budget, for example. A lot of your ancillary things have to be negotiated with contracts, whether it be traffic barricades all the way down to catering, legal liability, our meeting with our legal folks, really communicating with our parents. So these stakeholders were wide and vast, and we picked them up as we went because we realized we needed to include other folks in the conversation. But it was 10 months for us to from our initial, and now, just like Jason said, and Jason and I, for those of you who don't know, we're in the same geographic area. The next season begins right after graduation ends for the last.
So Jason, who do you pull into those the planning stage? The local PD, other stakeholders in the community. What type of group do you have to plan and coordinate response and security?
So I think some of the discussions that we've had about what does your unified command look like as you're preparing for this,
Right.
and also on game day. So we've had anywhere from the local police, fire, EMS group with us, but also including like your state highway administration, because you're going to impact what goes on the roads considerably depending on where your location is. County roads also may be involved. You may have some infrastructure issues that you need to look at. We've even gone as far as do we need to bring in a cell phone cow to increase cell phone service because we're going to add 2 to 3 times more of the population onto one space. In our case, we use drones as Overwatch. So we have our drone unit that's there. If the local police, which we've used local police in the past, if they want to fly drone units, you may have that. Last year, we had an issue where we were flying our drones and our local electrical company came and they were doing some surveying of some lines, and we had some helicopters that were flying fairly close, but nothing that was dangerous. And so with that took some coordination. So there's all kinds of people that you got to think of that you're going to affect and what's going on. Neighborhood associations, depending on what your location is, your local news, PIO groups, things like that, because you may want to set up a JIC. There's all kinds of things that you need to bring in that, as Doyle said, that you're not thinking about. It's more than just teaching and learning and your safety and security folks. There's student services may need to be there. We've had to look at we've had to look at the fact that who's coming to your graduations. Graduations are for the parents. They're not necessarily for the kids. They're for the families. So when you have that, in many cases, they're bringing in a lot of older folks to see these graduations, and that can lead to a lot of medical issues that you may not be anticipating. So when we look at those things, how is that going to, in our case, our jurisdiction has paid paramedics, but a volunteer fire service. So how's that going to affect in one hospital? How could that overrun your hospital very, very quickly, especially if it's a hot day because you're doing these in May or June? So there's lots going on there that you need to think about. We brought in our hospital because you could have their triage teams there working with you. So it's don't just limit it to your school system. Limit it to, you make sure that you're very expansive to everybody that you could be involving.
So, I mean, Jason, how do you plan for graduation as opposed to a sporting event at the school? Are there any differences between graduation and a football game, basketball game, or any other activity at the school, extracurricular activity that gathers people together?
Uh, yes, huge differences because it's for one small general area of if you have 2,000 kids in a high school, you probably have about 500 to 600 kids that are graduating, and your venue is going to have limits on how many people can depend. No matter where you go, there's going to be limits, and you're never going to give enough tickets to enough people. Some people are going to want we give 8 tickets because our venue holds 44,000 people. After we take all the things that we need to take, it actually has a mass capacity of 4,500. So if you're putting 44,000 people in there, and then there's a lot of age diversity that goes on there. The weather's going to be a problem because it's during the day. Most baseball games are at night. Most after school activities are at night. There's all kinds of, it's not the same planning process. Plus the amount of people that are coming in, you have people that aren't from the community. You have people who aren't used to going to things like this. There's a lot of different things that go into than just planning a normal Friday night football game.
So, speaking of that, Kelly, so how do you manage access for graduates, families and staff? How do you manage all of that and control access?
Yeah, so the big thing for us is that we do separate out the entrances for families and attendees versus the graduates themselves, as well as our whether it's like VIP or our admin staff that are coming in. Everybody kind of goes through separate entrances. UCF has private security that they have working and use weapon detections for screening. And, everybody's kind of given their report time, and they're very strict about, making sure that they're letting people in at the designated times so that we can kind of very much control the flow and movement. We also even have, kind of even with the separate parking garages of where we utilize for trying to kind of funnel people in so that we're not overwhelming any particular area at any particular time.
Got it. Got it. And Doyle, and what about in the case at Anne Arundel? How did you manage that? Was it open? Did you limit the number of tickets per student? How was that access control managed from your perspective?
Right. The number of tickets allocated definitely has to be equitable, but yes, they are limited based on the size of the venue. As Jason indicated, some schools may get 8, per family. Some may get more because the school graduate sizes are smaller. One of the things that we learned when you have multiple events at one site and you're having to turn over the venue is you have to factor in the cleanup time in between ceremonies, and you have to factor in the queue lines that are going to naturally form because people arrive obscenely early, unlike some other events that you might think of. We have a first event went off at 9 o'clock, and you're having people show up at 6:30 in the morning. It's not a problem in the first one, but in subsequent events, that cleanup time and access control, just like Kelly said, splitting the graduates with the families and having a lot of wayfinding volunteers really helps to have friendly faces, especially school-based folks, and not law enforcement necessarily. Who the school-based folks, they're used to interacting with families and parents, and that wayfinding is a lifesaver for a lot of folks, especially our elderly and folks this is also important later on, having the ability to communicate radio needs. If you find that someone didn't know they needed a wheelchair, but now all of a sudden have a longer walk than they realized. So those type of access controls, getting folks to where they need to be. Now, we've learned a lot through the years, especially as Jason has indicated, involving the folks who might not normally come to a school-based event.
Jason.
So a couple things that I'd offer from a security standpoint, as Doyle talked about with tickets. So understand that you're always going to lose the conversation as a school system on what's fair, what's equitable, and everything else. So in our case, we know that our largest class is going to be about 450 kids. We know that our stadium holds about 4,000 people at what we can give. So we give 8 tickets that's allocated to that one school. Every other school gets 8 tickets. Even though they're the largest, we don't want to give just because you go to in our jurisdiction, just because you go to a smaller school doesn't mean you get more tickets. We found that causes us more problems and more screams for equality, equity, and all those other things, even though we're limited on the amount of tickets. So just something to understand in your PR machine, how you're going to handle that. It's never going to be enough. Locally here, there was just a news story with a local jurisdiction that I handed out 5 tickets, and the parents their plan is to hand out 5 tickets, and the parents are already on every local news channel screaming about the fact that they're only getting 5 tickets for graduation. We give out 8. It's not enough for some. It's too many for others. We've actually seen a black market for our graduation tickets that are being sold online. We have went completely away from paper tickets because, believe it or not, apparently there was some printing company locally that was printing counterfeit tickets for us on our paper tickets. So at times we had hundreds of counterfeit tickets that were coming in. So we now do nothing but digital tickets, utilizing the same program that we use for football games and basketball games. The other thing that we found was that we want positive control of our parking lots. So we give out 2 parking passes, even though there may be 1,000 parking spots in our parking lot. And we have the highest coming is 450 kids or 450 kids that are graduating. So technically that would be 900 or so. We may have 1,500 to 1,000 parking spots in our place, but everybody gets 2 parking passes, and we have positive control over our parking lots because parking lots are where people will congregate and stay, as Doyle was talking about in the transition. So we'll do 2 or 3 every day, depending on the day, 9, 1, and 5. We want to push the graduation ceremonies to last less than 2 hours, even for our biggest classes, so that we can push everybody out and then get the next group in. But that positive control of that parking lot is very, very effective. The other thing that I'll talk about when it comes to entry control points that we've learned, we used to have teachers, as Doyle mentioned, having those great wayfinders of teachers that are in the school and everything else. We used to have teachers that were collecting tickets, and no teacher that I knew of that wanted to be that person that ever said no to a graduating family. So what we ended up with was we had rules. You couldn't bring umbrellas, you couldn't bring flowers, couldn't bring balloons, couldn't bring all these things in because it was disruptive, distracting, and everything else. However, after about 3 times of telling somebody no and people whining, our teachers would be like, okay, you can leave it here, or you can take it in, or just don't let me see it, or whatever else. So So we ended up with our own flower store and our own balloon store at the front that then we became responsible for. So what we ended up doing is I took all the teachers off of the entry control points because we don't have like Kelly where you have a private security force doing that. And my security people are the only ones that work the front gate because my security people are used to saying no all the time. And they have the proper attitude to be able to tell people thank you, but no thank you, and what the rules are going to be and to be consistent across all 7 of our graduations. And we found that to be very, very helpful as it relates to entry control.
Thanks, Jason. Kelly, building off of that, what does your team look like at the off-campus, the stadium? I know you mentioned it's a mix between the university and the local PD, but what does that team look like? Who heads it? Who is the head of that team? If there's an incident, who's leading that unified command at your graduation ceremonies?
Yeah, so ultimately, because it's within the jurisdiction for UCF PD, they have their incident commander that is there working all of the events. So in addition to our graduations, they generally have, I think it's anywhere from 3 to 4 graduations a day. Sometimes that's 3 from Seminole, but sometimes that's also a mix of Seminole and other jurisdictions, which again can also add in some other challenges as well. But we have their incident commander that we have direct contact with throughout the incident, and they have a huge contingency of people working their traffic, as well as in the arena and outside. And then from our school safety and security team, Captain Shaw is generally the incident commander on the Seminole County Sheriff's Office side, and any one of our other law enforcement partners from the Sheriff's Office is there as well. And we work in conjunction throughout the event and any of the ones that we have with UCF. So if there was an incident, it would be a unified command at that location and kind of working through everything that's going on.
Yeah, I've seen the Security Operations Center at UCF. It's quite an impressive setup over there for sure. So we're about halfway through. We have a lot of questions that have come in from participants. So let's if you have questions, please press the Q&A button and type them in here. Let's see here. First questions here. What is the most unexpected issue you faced during a graduation, and how did you handle it? Jason, well, actually, either one of you are welcome to take this one. Unexpected issue they've experienced at a graduation that you didn't necessarily plan for, or how you dealt with it. Doyle. Oh, Kelly, you can jump in right after.
Probably the most alarming one that I've ever had, and it's happened a couple of times, was a tornado warning going off during the recessional as our students were leaving the commercial venue. And in one occasion, when we had an on-campus event, a severe thunderstorm came in. But you know how it is, the lightning sometimes just shows up out of nowhere. And this was before we had lightning detection for our exterior venues. So you know what to do when you're literally halfway in and halfway out the building when the tornado warning goes off, and you can actually physically start to see clouds starting to move in a nasty fashion. That was it was bad. And when trying to decide, and I'll be the first one to tell you, we didn't think that was ever, never even thought about that happening. But from that point on, we had to figure out with the venue management how to reverse our folks back in, because from a liability standpoint, you have to question if you're pushing folks out into this environment when you know that it's a hazard and something happens, whose liability is that? But then when we try to get the folks to go back in the building, we had severe disruptions, fights among families. It was crazy. So that was the worst. And I don't know how you exactly prevent that from happening, but I can tell you, you have to give it consideration because it's happened several times in my experience.
Man. What about you, Kelly? Any unexpected situations that emerged in
Oh
graduation?
yeah. Yeah, it's always fun times, right? Everything from one time having a guy run through on a bicycle completely naked. Another, I think it was 2 years ago, I was leaving out of the area, and one of the graduates actually hit my car. So then there was a whole thing with that, and I felt terrible because, poor kid just graduated and we're having to deal with, traffic crash and stuff. But more seriously, one of the most recent incidents we had one time, and it didn't occur at our graduation. Again, this is kind of where it goes back into those more complex things and having to think through everything. We had an incident at another county's graduation, but again, with that overlap and having to plan ahead for kind of having, groups of people coming in at other times, there was an altercation in one of the parking garages, and one of the subjects pulled out a weapon. So then, of course, UCF had, a major response, and we're having to then come into there on the back end and make sure all of that was kind of flushed out and handled, and that it was safe for us, to continue having our families come in and make sure our graduation went off smoothly. So again, goes back to those relationships and having those conversations and collaborating ahead of time.
Jason, please.
So much like Doyle in this general region, Maryland has the freakiest weather you'd ever seen. So only probably rivaled by our friends in Texas, where it'll just pop up out of nowhere, and you have all those things. But we have seen one of the other things that I think we were completely unprepared for was the amount of geriatric patients that were affected by very high heat and the mass casualty events that can quickly occur at these events. And one thing that, another thing that we've seen, barricade incidents in neighborhoods surrounding the venue, everything that you can think of, Murphy's Law will occur when you have these big things. So that's where when we have any of these events, we have a standing unified command with representatives with a decision maker from all of the affected stakeholders in the unified command that is operational the entire time that we're running these graduations, so that we're making sure we're monitoring the weather, monitoring what local law enforcement. Last year we had a uncoordinated attempted landing of a medevac helicopter just outside of a graduation ceremony as we were getting ready to leave. As we were getting ready to depart. So if you can imagine the mess that would have caused because somebody didn't understand the unified command structure and everything else, that could have been just absolutely disastrous. But luckily we were able to get on top of it because of the structure that we have in place.
No kidding. Wow. A lot of interesting scenarios here. I've looked, we have a few people asking about bags. Like, do you allow bags? Someone mentioned having clear bags allowed. Jason, so you don't allow any bags?
Well, we allow baby bag if they have a baby to go with it. That's the only thing that we have, and a hand clutch. You're not allowed to bring in anything else. We do not have, in our venue, does not have weapons detection at entry control point, so we don't have those issues. But and we also make that every baby counts as a ticket. So there's no, if they're under 3, if they're under 2, if it's a person, it gets counted as a ticket. So that's one of your 8. And that is consistent across the board. No bags. I will, my whole thing on clear backpacks is it's optical. It really does nothing to make you any safer, because as soon as you put a Post-it note inside of it, you can't see what's behind the Post-it note. So clear bags are just optical, and I want to do things that actually work. And if bags are an issue, just say no. You're not bringing them in. And again, this becomes as much of it as a policy and tactical driven and assessment driven decision on what you're going to do. It also becomes a PR issue, and internally you've got to have people that are willing to back you up and aren't going to change their mind halfway through. One of the things that Doyle spoke about with the storms, the biggest issue isn't necessarily a storm. It's just getting somebody to make a decision of what we're going to do. Are we going to let everybody go? We're going to push everybody out. We're going to bring everybody back in. Are we going to speed up the ceremony? We're going to cancel the ceremony and just give everybody diplomas and say, we're sorry, this wasn't our doing. It's making somebody make those decisions. And a lot of that happens prior to the event and whether you're doing tabletops or during your planning or during your unified command discussions. That's where those things need to be decided.
Kelly, please.
Yeah, very similar. We have the same, no bag policy. They allow small purses in. One of the things I really do like that they've put together is a guide that actually the marketing group event group that runs UCF's events actually put it together for us. It was really good. And it's got all the things in there that communicates out to the families ahead of time, what's allowed, everything from, parking, layout of the arena. It's got everything in there. So again, back to that, good PR and good communication to make sure that we're setting expectations ahead of time. And I think back to Jason's point of making sure you do have that gatekeeper that's not afraid to say no, because once you let one person do it, you're going to have a lot harder time, trying to dial it back for anybody else and not making exceptions on those things, even though it can, sometimes be difficult, but.
That was a big thing, and Doyle, that was a big thing with the superintendents is communicating, over communicating. You cannot communicate enough expectations well in advance. Like you cannot bring in bags, you cannot bring in flowers. If you're at Charles County, you could buy them at the front desk. But all those things, making sure that you communicate them well in advance, so there is no question expectations are set. Doyle, please.
One thing we found is the families are not going to typically get that information all the way out to grandparents. Sometimes you're going to find a lot of folks are going to show up who they haven't heard none of this. So having the folks, the greeters, the wayfinders, the people out in the external areas, whatever your policy is, whatever you're on bags or on balloons or on any of those type of things, having that friendly conversation just as a reminder, and even having whatever was disseminated to families in a hand if you need it, or local nearby so it can be presented back just to back that up. But it's a friendly conversation. And we've been very successful in historically with getting getting that information to folks who may not have received it from their graduate.
Thank you, Doyle. Let's take a few more questions here from participants. These registering, let's see here. Collaboration that's come up around. Somebody asked about, okay, this came up, and Jason, you mentioned this. Kelly, are you employing weapons detection, concealed or otherwise, at UCF for graduation?
Yes, they do utilize pass-through metal detectors as part of their screening process with their security company that everybody coming into the arena has to go through. And we do have the other big thing with that is to make sure that you have a policy or procedure in place with the arena if the other neighboring jurisdiction, set up for other LEOs that are on, and that they know who those armed law enforcement are that are coming in. If they're going to allow parents, that's one thing, but like even for us, so we make sure ahead of time they have everybody from our team pictures, and we meet with them as well, make sure that we're banded and things like that. Because the last thing you would want to, if something were to happen, is to have any type of blue on blue action as well. So.
Got it. Thank you, Kelly. Let's see. Charles asks if you've implemented geofencing to communicate with attendees, or do you communicate with it? I mean, do you have any sort of communication mechanism with attendees in real time, Jason?
So a couple things that I would offer. Geofencing is one of those things that sounds wonderful and great and everything else, but it requires, in this particular case, likely the downloading of some type of an app or something along those lines where people have to register. They may get registered or unregistered. All these other things that they're doing. Here, I think, again, I'll go right back to mastering of the fundamentals. The fundamentals, everybody gets their information with the graduation ceremony from where? From the podium. From the loudspeakers in the venue, and as soon as you start to change that, it confuses more people than your announcements that are going to be made from the podium. We do something that's fairly unique, I believe, that we learned in our last conversation with NCSSD. I am the first person that anybody ever sees on the podium, and I'm giving a safety briefing at the beginning of every graduation. So I welcome the crowd. We go through. We talk about the rules for the rules for umbrellas and the rules for vaping and smoking, and then we get into reporting suspicious activity, and we get into all these other things that it's only a couple minute speech, but I'm the first person that they see. I'm also the last person that they see when the ceremony is done. I jump onto the stage again, and I tell everybody to thanks for joining and get out. And that's a little bit different. It's, as Doyle talked about, a little bit of a liability thing and making sure that we are that we're giving that safety briefing. This year we're going to do it a little bit different with it being pre-recorded instead of doing it every time. It takes me away from managing the safety and the security of the venue. But I would highly suggest that you do that, making sure that you're passing that information on, getting people thinking, even though they're not listening. It's at least providing some of them the information that they need out there. So, ultimately, that over communication, as we've talked about, but making sure that when you're coordinating and you're planning these things, that somebody's willing to make decisions. If they're going to pass it to you, then you need to be willing to make those decisions. If they're not going to pass it to you, then you need to figure out who's going to be the one that makes the decision and what different event could occur. I'll give you a great example. If there's a bomb threat at a venue that you don't own, what are you going to do? Like Kelly said at UCF, that may be a whole different thing because that's not your jurisdiction. But in my area, there's no other security people, so it's my jurisdiction. When we work that out with the venue, what we're going to do at Doyle may have owned his venue, so they may do what they do in their venue and control it. But those are some things that unfortunately we have to talk about and walk through.
Jason, you mentioned suspicious activity reporting. What mechanisms do you have, Jason? I'd love to hear from Kelly and Doyle as well. Do you have to report suspicious activity? Is it just as simple as, hey, if you go talk to an usher if you see something of concern? What's your mechanism for that?
So
Or mechanisms?
In the welcome briefing that we do, we tell people to talk to the nearest law enforcement or EMS or CCPS and personnel identified by their yellow placards that they wear. That make it very clear who's working and who's not. If they see somebody acting strangely or doing something suspicious, that's it. It's very open-ended. And what we find is when you solicit everybody's help and you acknowledge the fact that, hey, that could happen, even if it's just somebody acting strangely because they're having a medical emergency, we want you to be able to reach out there and get help. We don't need to go deep dive into if you see this and see that and see that, report it here, report it there. Just look, we're here to help, and we're, as Doyle talked about, that advanced communication, that willingness to help, being able to provide some empathy to what's going on there to make sure that everybody is as safe as possible so that you can celebrate with your children.
Kelly or Doyle, do you have any other more elaborate mechanisms to report suspicious activity, or is it as simple as Jason said, just go find a law enforcement or safety official and share your concern, Doyle?
Every time it's been see something, say something to somebody nearby, and the word travels. Making sure that your staff working the event are in the parking lot areas, obviously from a safety standpoint, having them in highly visible gear, but it also gives so you don't get hit by a car is one thing, but it also gives people an immediate authority looking figure to go to say something, and making sure that at least one of the people that might be working in that traffic control group or parking group has a radio that can communicate back to the command center, can get law enforcement involved. We've had fights in parking lots that our staff have seen that have been able to call immediately for law enforcement, very quick response. So the see something, say something has worked for us way better than any technology ever might.
Yeah, and so obviously ours are very similar as well. But one of the other things I kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think is also an important point. So during most of our graduations, we do still have school going on in county when they're during the day, but we do send coverage to that high school for law enforcement for our Safe School Officer SRO coverage, and do take one of our school resource officers and have them at the graduation, because that is like, for the law enforcement side, that most familiar face for those kids, and for the families as well. So they kind of already have that established relationship. So again, kind of going back to who would be that person that I would come find for them, I think it would be that SRO. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Jason, Andrew asks, how many students do you typically have, or how many people do you have in attendance at your graduations at Charles County?
So if we're running our graduating classes can run from 250 kids to 450 kids, depending on which one of the 7 high schools we're talking about. Add on top of that, everybody gets 8 tickets and 2 parking passes. So whatever your figure comes up to is what we're at. At its top end, it's close to about 4,000 people to include all the workers and everything else that's there. We, much like everybody else, we have school that is continuing in session, with the exception of the middle school feeder school for the high school, or I'm sorry, the feeder schools for that, I believe is the way that we do it, is the feeder schools for that school are off that day. And then the other schools are in session as well. So that way all the siblings can come and everything else. So, but ultimately the high end, our venue's a 4,500 person stadium. We may have about high end would be 4,000 is what it would probably top out at.
So with 4,000 people, how many first aid tents or paramedics do you have on standby for that? How do you plan for that as far as EMT?
So we've kind of done a pretty unique. What we found was the biggest issue that we were having was overheating due to the temperature, the humidity, and everything else. A couple things that we did. We used to allow people in an hour early. We now only allow people in 30 minutes early. Because it's a baseball stadium, there's really no bad seat in the house. You can see everything from everywhere. So there's no rush to get everybody in. So we only open the gates 30 minutes early. We also provide one bottle of water at the beginning, and for all of our students, they get water on the field. We will have traditionally anywhere between 5 and 7 EMTs, paramedics, somebody there from a local volunteer station that's usually come to do their goodwill, and at least one ambulance. But the other thing that we did that we found was very, very helpful is we park 2 air conditioned buses outside of the venue, right at the main gate area, so that when we overcrowd our walking wounded area for people to sit and recover in, we can then take people. Each bus holds about 44, 42 people. We can now start to take people into those buses to cool off. One of the other things that we found was that people thought that if they came with grandma or with grandpa, or they themselves had some type of a heat issue, that they were going to get a special seat and be able to have special seats to be able to see the graduation. So we quickly and abruptly made it to where our walking wounded area, our triage area, is out of view of everything, and we don't even put a TV in it for them to see the venue. And outside where the air conditioned tents are, they can't see the venue either. And lo and behold, that really slowed down the amount of people that went to the medical tents for what I would consider more of a less need than anything else. And once word got out that you weren't getting any special treatment, you weren't being put into we didn't have a suite for you to go into when you were sick. Lo and behold, our numbers went down, which was extremely helpful to us as well.
Jason, just a quick note here. Megan asks if you can post your speech, your safety briefing to the NCSSD community.
So Megan, it is posted in the NCSSD community, and you're more than welcome to go in. For those of you who are not members, I have repeatedly posted the scholarship link in there, and all of our emergency operations plan, our welcome speech, and our exit speech is all posted in the NCSSD community, which is the world's most vibrant community for school safety professionals for anybody to join. So,
And the speech is a tearjerker, I have to warn you, Megan.
absolutely, it's 1 page long.
One page alone. Hey, so Kelly, talk about your emergency medical support during your graduation, and Doyle, I'd love to hear what you did as well at Anne Arundel from a planning perspective, or any guidance on the medical side of things.
Yeah, so our where the arena is actually, in the campus in general, is very close to the Seminole County, Orange County line. So we do generally have a lot of times joint response with both Seminole County and Orange County Fire Rescue Medical. So again, coordinating with them as far as anything related to the event, anything that might possibly come up. They're part of that unified command structure and the overall planning for all of our events.
And Doyle, Anne Arundel, just curious if anything that you've done is different from Jason or Kelly on the medical side.
Well, one thing I've learned, the cooling station, as Jason was talking about, is really essential. We nearly had an event shut down because of mass casualty. The topography of the location was literally all uphill from the parking area to the stadium. Folks were showing up dressed all in black, like it was a formal ball gown kind of deal, and we're getting overheated. One thing I'll point out, though, you'll never have enough ADA accessible parking, no matter where you are. If you're for your on-campus environments where you own the opportunity, as I've had the opportunity to do, I realized very quickly that I had to manufacture additional ADA parking near the venue for people who had legitimate ADA placards. So I would tell you in advance the most accessible parking areas you may have to artificially manufacture. I used blue cones and had wayfinding individuals for traffic control, that when these folks would have a placard in some way when they first entered the venue, that we could direct them to these areas. And it saved us quite a bit of medical issues from folks who were going to otherwise have to go uphill for a very extended distance in the heat. So that's the one thing that ever since then I have learned. Anytime we own the venue, that we want to have a plan to create a lot more ADA parking than you would ordinarily think.
Doyle, you sparked something that part of our superintendent discussion was about attire restrictions, like wearing caps, no caps. Are there any safety restrictions that either one of you have or had at your districts when it came to what graduates can and cannot wear? Jason, do you?
Again, this is going to be a conversation as it relates to your internal processes for academics. Um, we allow our kids to paint and do the things on their mortar boards. And that was a huge change in our things. I'm not real sure why, because I'm just a retired cop. But we don't allow, because of our venue, we don't own the venue, we don't allow anybody to wear heels. They have to wear flats, and that also is a huge deal. We are fairly strict on you must wear the appropriate attire, you must wear the robe, the gown, and your mortar board. But yes, we do have some restrictions, but I do believe one of the things that's really saved us is we use the junior marshals and some teachers to sit on the field to hand out water to make sure that we're watching for medical issues. There's always the occasional student who needs assistance because of their disability, or they're in a wheelchair or something along those lines. Practicing and having a plan for that is very, very important as well.
Kelly or Doyle, did either one of you have any sort of restrictions on apparel? It's
Nothing
just
that's
something.
outside of our normal dress code. Yeah. I mean, the
So
heel thing
Okay.
has been an issue though, I think in the past with some of the girls. They're pretty big and it does, can be a little nerve-wracking watching them try to get up on stage. So
Yep. Doyle, anything that you want to add to that?
no, there was just one thing I saw pop up in the chat, and it made me think of something. As far as renting shuttles for ADA folks, or for people who might have alternate abilities, just make sure you run through your legal folks in advance, because who's driving that equipment, you're making sure that it's rated for what you're using it for. Because I'll be first one to tell you, I didn't think of that when we were back in the day, and we intended only to use gator type equipment to shuttle staff around. But the next thing you know, we have hardship cases, and you have people staring at you with able-bodied staff. You're rolling around, and now you're not picking up, elderly grandma who can barely walk. And so, we were putting them on these gators and shuttling them back and forth. But had we had an incident, it could have been a very bad liability for the district. So just make sure that you just have that discussion with your legal folks before you commit to doing something like that. Thanks.
Good point.
So the only thing that I'll add on top of that with what Doyle said is there is specific insurance for being a chauffeur and for chauffeuring people around if you're going to use little small 15-passenger vans or buses or golf carts or anything else. So you need to make sure that you understand that. But secondly, understand that the more that you do, the more that will be expected. And you need to control and manage those expectations. One of the things that, like, even though we only give 2 parking passes, as a side note, make sure that if you do positively control your parking lot, you have a plan for rideshare and drop-offs. We didn't do that, and that turned into a mess once. So make sure that you have that. But we don't park cars in our parking lot. As Doyle was talking about, there's only a certain amount of handicap and disabled parking, and we are not policing that on who can have what and who's entitled to what and everything else. We control your entrance into the parking lot. We don't park cars. There are yellow and white lines on the parking that people understand what they do, and if they can't figure that out, having a parking person screaming at them and getting frustrated and everything else isn't probably worth your time. So manage what you control, what you think you can control, and understand you're managing expectations. People have to be adults at some point in time. So let them be adults and make them be adults. Just be careful with where you go with this. And again, I'll really push on unified command, having a good PR team and ensuring your PR team is available and is involved in everything, and making sure that your upper echelon, your chain of command, supports you in your decision making, or what that decision making chain is going to be, because there are going to be some tough calls that need to be made, and not everybody's going to be happy with them. And remember, if it gets to you, 9 other people failed to make the decision before you. So it's a crappy decision or an even crappier decision. That's the only solutions that are left by the time it gets to you. And you've got to be able to be willing to make those decisions.
No, great point, Jason. We have time just for maybe a couple more questions here. And this is open to either one of you. What lessons have you learned the hard way, things that went wrong that fundamentally changed how you plan for graduation security? Doyle, you mentioned the thunderstorm or lightning that came in suddenly. Any other things that either one of you have experienced that help shape the way you do things, or things that you can offer as advice, Doyle?
The biggest thing I would offer, especially for on-campus events, is you need enough people. You can do anything if you have the people to do it, but then once you have the people, you have to have virtual and in actual in-person training scenarios to where you actually go out and have the folks at least see where they're going to be, see what they're going to do, and have some reasonable chance to be effective in doing it. I found that, when we were going to have wayfinding individuals to do certain things, they physically weren't capable of doing it. And once they got out and into the location and saw where it was, then we had to make those adjustments. So if in your planning, it's just like any other thing, when you map it, you can map it, but you got to physically go out there to it. And some folks will self-select out if you're working with volunteers in the K through 12 environment. They want to be helpful, but you have to make sure that you're really taking care of the people who are taking care of people. So that's the lesson that I learned the most. And we've had, in my experience, a lot of people volunteered to come to work these events, even though tremendously long hours, 16-hour days, but they knew they were being taken care of. Their food needs were met. Their respite needs were met. All their needs were met while they were also meeting the needs of our attendees. So if you keep that in mind, fundamentally taking care of the people who take care of people, that's the biggest lesson that I learned. And I think that's what has been essential in making it successful for all these years. Thank you.
So what's interesting, thank you, Doyle. When we were discussing securing like sporting events, like Friday night football, for example, one of the topics that came up was allowing off-duty officers to bring concealed weapons into the stadium. How do you handle that at your schools when it comes to graduation ceremonies? Do you allow, I don't know if you even allow off-duty officers to carry concealed weapons during the sporting events, but do you allow that during a graduation, Jason, for example?
So my best advice to that would be lean back on the law. Whatever your state law is, I don't know why you would want to add complication to whatever the state law is. If your state allows off-duty police officers or retired police officers to carry a weapon on school grounds, and your venue's on school grounds, then do that. There's no reason to complicate it. In our case, we are at a offsite location. So we have no control over that. Maryland has a concealed carry permit. If you have a concealed carry permit, you're allowed. It's a school activity. It is not a school venue, and the law starts and stops at the school property line. And in that case, so just follow whatever your law says.
Thank you, Jay. And we're actually out of time, so would love just to allow each of you to provide just a few words of wisdom, some final thoughts for participants. Jason, since we have your line open, why don't you go ahead and share your final thoughts for our participants here today?
So, along the same lines of what Doyle was saying earlier, one of the things that we struggle with is the school that is graduating, all of their staff comes to help. It is great to have all those resources. It is horrible to have all those resources that don't want to work and just get in the way. So what my suggestion to you would be to make sure that you have clearly defined jobs for these individuals and clearly defined expectations, because they will also disappear halfway through the ceremony when you need them the most. So again, this all boils down to positive, proactive planning. I would highly suggest utilizing the Coast Guard Planning P and the ICS model, making sure that you're utilizing a unified command structure, making sure that you have good proactive decision-making models in place that can be activated very, very quickly. Because I'm telling you, eventually Murphy's Law is going to catch up to you, and you're going to have all kinds of things that happen, and you've got to have people willing to make those decisions and understand that they are always going to be bad decisions, and the potential for people to be upset is highly possible. So just keep that in mind. Hope to see everybody on the NCSSD website. We've posted a lot of the resources. I posted it a couple times. Scholarship, I'll post one more time. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and I appreciate it. It's an honor to sit with Doyle, Kelly, and Aura. These are great people who do great things every day for our kids and our staff, and thank you again.
Thanks, Jason. Kelly, any final thoughts that you have for our participants here before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate everybody's time today. I think the big thing at the end of the day, this is supposed to be and will be, maybe one of those events that for these kids and the families, that's one of the biggest days of their lives, right? Especially at that age. So the way that we can ensure that that all goes smoothly and successfully are to do all the things that, we were kind of talking about today. But overall, planning is huge, and clear, consistent communication well in advance of the event and obviously throughout is going to be one of the biggest, I think, hallmarks for success. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Very important stuff. And Doyle, final thoughts from you, sir.
I think this is my first ZeroNow panel that I've been able to participate in. So thank you for the opportunity. These things are complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, but it's all a matter of size and scale, whether it's large or it's small. It's all manageable. And you have a lot of resources within this group, within this panel, and within the organization. Just reach out. And people are happy to have a conversation, happy to help you in any way possible. You've heard from this panel that we've had on campus, off campus. I mean, this group has seen a lot. So please use your resources, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Doyle. And as a reminder, we had way too many questions than we could answer during the live program. So those we posted in the NCSSD community within the next 30 minutes. And so Kelly, Jason, and Doyle, we'll send a reminder to log in so you could respond to those questions that we were not able to answer here or ask here. I just want to remind the next conversation is on securing private and charter schools, and that will be May 19th. 2:00 right here. Registration will be, it is open for that now. So register for that. And like Jason said, and we all say, please be sure to register for the roundtables for NCSSD to be a part of the conversation, to hear your insights with other safety professionals around the nation. So thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Jason. Thanks, Doyle. We'll see you all soon, and take care.